and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and coming to you at 12:15 a.m. Just finished up that Seahawks-Cardinals thriller that seemed like it was over about 10 times, but it is now finally done. Congrats to the Cardinals on that thrilling victory. But we got 12 total games to go through on this episode of the podcast, coming to you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every single week. Want to go over some injuries in this and then quickly go through every game with some snap counts, big plays, and of course our PFF Lily favorite stat of every single matchup. So starting off with some injuries from the day and some things to look forward to, just in terms of potential waiver wire pickups and who could benefit from a fantasy football perspective. So Kenyan Drake suffered an ankle injury at the end of the game. Was rolling around in agony, even crying. Tough to see. Obviously, Chase Edmonds is going to be bumped up into, literally a top 12 running back situation here moving forward without Drake in the picture. Potentially, we'll see what the severity of the injury is. But, Benjamin will be someone that, comes in, I think, as a number 2. But I fully do expect, Edmonds to kind of take what we thought was going to be, the full-time Drake role this year. And that was what we saw for most of 2019. A true 3-down RB1. Get Chase Edmonds, do whatever you need to do to get this guy on the waiver wire. Hopefully, because you've been listening to this podcast already, you've already been storing him on the bench since your drafts. But if not, he's going to be anyone's idea of the number 1 waiver ad of the week. A couple of wide receivers that got banged up, but then they were able to come back just fine. T. Higgins, Stephon Diggs, and Russell Gage are okay, everybody. They return to action after being briefly sidelined. No worries there. Seahawks running back Chris Carson was deemed questionable in the first half with a foot injury. Never returned. We saw a mix of, Carlos Hyde, DJ Dallas, even Travis Homer after that. I would kind of expect that to continue to be a split backfield. Rashad Penny could be someone coming back soon. That would be, I think, the main guy you want to pick up on the waiver wire. I just don't see Hyde, Homer, or Hyde, Homer, or the freaking Penny dude. Oh my goodness. Penny's going to be the one there. Hyde, Homer, DJ Dallas. Excuse me, everyone. Been a long day. I don't expect any of them to really get that same sort of Chris Carson every down role. If anyone's going to get it, it's going to be Rashad Penny. 49ers running back Jeff Wilson believed to have suffered a high ankle sprain right after his third touchdown of the day. We talked about this, Jerick McKinnon spot and why, he might not get that same role with Deebo Samuel back. The problem is Deebo Samuel is also hurt now with a hamstring injury. So honestly, this might be a situation where we want to go back to the well with Jerick McKinnon. I know people are upset, and I know Jermichael Hasty was the one getting some early down work, but the reason why McKinnon wasn't as involved this week was because they had their receivers and these other guys involved. All of a sudden, you take Wilson and Samuel from away from the situation. I do think Jerick McKinnon is slowly but surely getting back into that top 3 playmaker kind of pecking order in the offense. It's still Kittle 1 and probably Brandon Ayuk number 2, but we see Shanahan week after week, matchup after matchup, continue to make the most of it. We just got to figure out who are going to be his primary ball carriers and move on from there. Broncos quarterback Drew Lock slid awkwardly towards the end of the game, so he kind of seemed hurt. We need to monitor that practice participation this week moving forward. Same thing with Phillip Lindsay, who's in the concussion protocol, as well as Broncos wide receiver Tim Patrick, who's banged up with a hamstring injury. So again, just kind of moving parts there. We could maybe see Melvin Gordon get a featured role, Jerry Jeudy, more condensed target share. We will see. A big injury from the day. Per ESPN's Adam Schefter, Browns wide receiver Odell Beckham is scheduled to undergo an MRI on his knee on Monday. The team does not have any definitive diagnosis after the win, but as one source said, per Schefter, sometimes it's hard to know for sure. Obviously, hope we dodge a bullet. I think it was Rappaport said that, this is an injury that they fear to be serious. We'll see. Prayers up for OBJ. Hopefully he is fine. This is a much more fun league with a healthy OBJ going out there and making plays. Andy Dalton suffered a bad concussion on a big-time cheap shot trying to slide during that Cowboys football team game, which means James Madison grabbed Ben DiNucci, next man up. If you guys are still just reveling in that awesome Sunday night game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals we just saw, please don't look ahead to next week. Well, I guess I'll spoil it for you now. Cowboys-Eagles, Sunday Night Football, Week 8. Shoot me. All right, Austin Hooper appendix sat out this week after going an appendectomy. Just wanted to bring this up because, this is something that could keep him sidelined for another week. So with Harrison Bryant, having such a big game, even David Njoku making his presence felt as well, we can, treat Bryant as a borderline tight end 1 ahead of next week's matchup. Aaron Jones with the Packers was a late addition to the injury report with the calf injury. Seemed pretty close to playing, but if not, Jamal Williams is going to be a guy that we're going to be able to put in the top 15. Seemed like a situation where, okay, you draft A.J. Dillon in the second round, you lose your starting running back. Hey, this is great. You have a second round running back you can now lean on. No, they gave Jamal Williams, almost the entire backfield split. Dylan Cleveland was little more than just, a clear backup option that got a couple carries. They do not trust him on pass downs yet. Rashad Penny got knocked out of the Jets game with took a concussion on the sideline at the end of the game. Look, Denzel Mims led them in targets, and this was not like Perryman got knocked out earlier in the game. So Denzel Mims, just based on target volume alone, if Crowder and Perryman are going to remain sidelined, will be a fantasy relevant factor. Patriots wide receiver Nikhil Harry wasn't out there for the majority of the game with a head injury. We'll see what happens with that. Look, not a good game for Cam Newton, but when Jacoby Myers is truly your best target, not great. Marquez Callaway, Saints wide receiver, had 8 targets on the day, but unfortunately injured his leg and was forced to leave early. If Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders get back soon, we will not see more from Callaway, but kudos to him for impressing with his limited opportunities. And then finally, Deontay Johnson got banged up at the end of the game with an ankle injury. So frustrating. Every time this guy comes out there, he's making plays, making people miss, but cannot quite stay healthy. So those are the injuries. Make sure you tune in to the Tuesday episode of this podcast. I go over the Monday Night Football game and then break down some of the top waiver wire claims. And then on the Friday episode, I break down the Thursday Night Football game and break down the key injuries to watch ahead of the weekend. So these depth charts are always changing around, everybody. We got to stay on top of it as much as possible. That is how we get, some hidden upside. And just really, when your guys are hurt, you got to find other guys that are getting hurt and try to scoop up the backups. That's why we're trying to make money in this crazy game that we call fantasy football. So I want to get on to the games now, starting off with the Browns and the Bengals. Browns took this one 37-34. Thrilling game, back and forth between both these quarterbacks. And, kudos to Baker Mayfield. He's someone that I really haven't given a ton of love on this podcast this year because until this game, he was posting worse numbers in everything than he had in both the 2019 and 2018. So despite the Browns, success in the wins-loss record, really hadn't seen Baker go out there and have a great performance yet. That changed on Sunday. He had a great game. Even without OBJ there, we saw Baker slinging it 22 for 28, 297 yards and 5 scores. Again, just a great game from Baker. I understand that people are going out there and saying, oh, well, OBJ went out and Baker had this great game. Is he better without it? From the standpoint that, like we talk about with Deshaun Watson this year, being better statistically without DeAndre Hopkins, and like the Panthers offense being better, statistically again without Christian McCaffrey. When you remove someone that you're just overly focusing on and just trying to force the ball to and thus not running an offense, I can get it from that perspective. But to imply that any team in the league wouldn't want to start Odell Beckham Jr. in 3 wide receiver sets, I can't get behind that. And please, please, please save your, OBJ being an off the field problem and who even wants to kind of do it with this guy, because all that stuff usually comes back to a kicking net, him taking with Victor Cruz. They took some photos on that ship before the Giants playoff game way back when. And even this play, he got injured trying to chase down the dude after an underthrown Baker Mayfield interception. The same thing that, we lauded DK Metcalf for entirety of Sunday night. That's unfortunately what got OBJ hurt. So I hope he's okay. The league is again so much better with a healthy OBJ out there making plays. Really hope it's nothing serious. With the Bengals, Joe Burrow, 406 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. This dude is going to put up absolutely crazy numbers this year because going into this game, he was leading the league in dropbacks. And after this game, he is still leading the league in dropbacks. Continued to make the right decision when he has a clean pocket to work from. When he's under duress, we've seen some problems, but he does always seem to have, a good idea where the ball's going. And, we've been talking up Justin Herbert a lot recently and, things he can do with his arm, make every throw on the field. Even if Burrow isn't that guy, just his ability to process so quickly, be, Tony Romo, sneaky athletic, what they like to say. But I really do think there is, a lot to be said with that Tony Romo comp, because it just seems like Burrow really has a plan every single play. And as long as they can just keep him somewhat upright, or at least just, keep things within the general confines of what the coach is drawing up, he can certainly execute it. So moving on to the backfields now. I dubbed this Kareem Hunt week, everybody. It wasn't quite Kareem Hunt week from, just a total production standpoint. 76 yards rushing, 26 yards receiving and a score, but the usage was exactly what we were hoping for. Again, this is not a 2-back backfield without Nick Chubb. This is a 1-back workhorse, and his name is Kareem Hunt. 92% snaps. That was the highest single week rate among all running backs. Again, mentioned the 18 carries, 4 targets. Dearness Johnson only had a single carry on the game. This is Kareem Hunt's backfield for as long as Nick Chubb is out. The only reason we didn't see this the past 2 weeks was because the Steelers were blowing them out in the last fourth quarter, and Kareem Hunt was cramping in the one before. So in a game where the Browns need to keep their foot on the gas, we saw Kareem Hunt really leave the field. He's going to continue to be a top 5 RB moving forward as long as Nick Chubb is sidelined. On the Bengals side of the ball, I'm taking a slight L here. I really didn't think that they would, force this Joe Mixon role on Giovanni Bernard. They have Samaje Perine, Travion Williams, guys that might be better suited to run the ball inside. What they ended up doing was they gave Giovanni Bernard 75% snaps. Perine was only there for 26%, 13 carries for Gio, and 5 targets. I mean, he just dominated the touch distribution from the backfield. The 5 targets, hey, that's all this backfield was getting other than one additional one to Perine. So that could even fluctuate in future weeks. That's only 13 carries. I mean, I think they just realized that, okay, Gio is playing the Joe Mixon role. Because of that, we need to change the offense and be a little bit more pass heavy than we otherwise would have been. So, you know what? That's a fair counter. I didn't think they would try to force, Gio into this 20 carry role. And they didn't. They just kind of changed the offense accordingly. So a situation where, again, it's always tough to tell with new coaching staffs and, changes, what's going to happen in these backfields. Best we can continue to do is monitor it, adjust, move forward. So, hey, if Mixon's remaining out and Gio's flirting with 15, 20 touches per week, he is going to be a high-end RB2, truly borderline RB1 potentially, because that pass down work he's getting is truly, what we're looking for in fantasy football land. Quickly on the receivers, shout out Rashard Higgins catching all 6 of his targets for 110 yards for the Browns. Also, Harrison Bryant with Austin Hooper out 56 yards and a pair of scores. Donovan Peoples-Jones ended up catching the game-winning touchdown down the sideline. I believe he did. That was Donovan Peoples-Jones. Game-winning touchdown down the sideline after Higgins got them down there. And then on the Cincinnati side of the ball, Tyler Boyd, 101 yards and a touchdown on 13 targets. A.J. Green also had 13 targets, got 82 yards with it. T. Higgins caught all 5 of his targets for 71 yards and a score. Look, I think it's Boyd 1, Higgins 2, Green 3. But as long as Burrow is, again, leading the league in dropbacks, he's going to be able to enable 3 fantasy-relevant wide receivers more weeks than not, particularly when we got Boyd and Higgins who are consistently making the most out of those opportunities. Green looked better. Honestly, it seems like the adjustment Burrow's made with Green is just whenever Green is going vertical down the field, it is no longer trying to lead him. It's just going back shoulder and trying to work on that. Makes sense, and it actually worked a few times this game. So I know we've been calling AJG pretty dusty here on this podcast, but if he's going to continue getting double-digit targets per game, he can be dusty and still be a viable fantasy commodity. Our PFF Lilly stat of this matchup, again, just awesome game from Baker Mayfield. The highest graded game of his career in PFF passing grade at 92.5. Look, he didn't take a sack, and for the first time all season, he didn't even scramble once. Just watching the game, I was really taken aback at just how constantly he was kind of taking a short drop, foot in the ground, first read, balls out. He was 9 for 10 for 74 yards and 3 touchdowns when getting the ball out of his hands in fewer than 2 seconds. He only had 2 such scores in weeks 1 through 6 combined. So this really did seem to be, a conscious effort for the Browns, get Baker more in rhythm. I feel like when he does run into problems, we see this time and time again, trying to roll out usually to his right, and he's not able to he's not athletic enough to outrun some of his defensive ends. So the more that he can, pick his spots with his off-script ability and, working from the inside the confines of this, looking pretty good system, the way they're working now, with this Kubiak offense up in Cleveland, I think the better that's going to be for his passing game moving forward. Next matchup here, we had the Lions defeat the Falcons 23-22. There were some crazy games today. Lions end up snatching this one. Todd Gurley had a chance to end the game if he did not score a touchdown. Unfortunately, his momentum carried him to the end zone. Lions got the ball back, were able to go down the field. Nice chunk play to Kenny Galladay. And then ultimately Matthew Stafford hit TJ Hawkinson for the game-winning score on the last play of the game. Credit to Stafford clearing 300 yards for the first time all season. He's now ripped off double-digit average target depths in 4 consecutive weeks since getting Kenny Galladay back in the lineup. Wasn't exactly the multi-touchdown performance we were kind of hoping to see out of this spot, but this passing game, they are more of a force to be reckoned with, particularly when we got a healthy Kenny Galladay. Oh my goodness. I think as soon as this podcast is up, I'm going to clip up some of his catches from today, because he had 6 for 114 yards, and I swear every single one of these catches was some sort of contested catch goodness. Guy all over him. A friend of PFF, Josh Hermsmeyer, he works at 538, but he did a cool study this offseason on separation and how a lot of these better receivers in the league were consistently getting this certain extent of separation. I can't do the article justice at this moment, but one of his takeaways was that Kenny Galladay was just an outlier in terms of the production he was able to get on a per target basis while not separating all that much. much. It makes sense. His takeaway matches exactly what we see on the film, which is Kenny Galladay. That dude's a handful for anyone to cover, regardless of how much space there's between him and defensive back. Also with the Lions receiving, Marvin Jones, 5 catches, 80 yards on 6 targets. So it wasn't exactly Minnesota Vikings 4 touchdown blow up, but in the spot against the Falcons, he did return some decent value. I think more weeks than not, we're not going to want to focus on anyone other than Galladay and Hawkinson in this passing game. But good to know Marvin Jones isn't completely dusted out just yet. On the Falcons side of the ball, Matt Ryan, 31 for 42, 338 yards and a score. Got Julio, 8 catches, 97 yards. Ridley, 5 catches, 69 yards in the score. Hayden Hurst and Russell Gage had 6 catches as well. Really wasn't forcing the ball to Ridley and Julio quite like we've seen in some of these past weeks. They only scored 22 points, so maybe there could have been something more to be said for that. But, Matt Ryan did go out there and mostly, do his thing. And again, this should have been a game that the Falcons won if Gurley just could restrain himself from falling into the end zone. So with these running back situations, good news for DeAndre Swift and the Lions to an extent. He played 44% of the offensive snaps. That was the most on the team. Adrian Peterson's at 31%, Kerryon Johnson 24%. But Swift, still had 9 carries while AP had 11. We know Swift's the pass down back. He continued to be that guy. But honestly, watching this game, I got excited because I just saw Swift and Peterson getting the ball all the time. I thought, hey, maybe we have a 2-back backfield now. No, Kerryon Johnson's still there, taking nearly a quarter of the game snaps, even though he's not even getting any touches. So Swift, this was a great matchup. He did find his way into the end zone on a short rush from inside the 5-yard line, I believe, but not a situation where he's the goal line back. AP still getting plenty of those touches as well. Unfortunately, Swift clearly looks like the better guy, but it's going to be kind of like an Antonio Gibson situation where, hey, in the right matchup, and Swift makes the most out of his touches, we're looking at a low-end RB2, but otherwise I think we're safer treating him as a flex play until we get, one of Kerryon or AP out of the picture. On the Falcons side of the ball, we have Gurley racking up 70% of the snaps, 23 carries and 3 targets. Look, the guy's getting 20-plus touches per week, and when they do get down, he loses a lot of comeback mode work to Brian Hill and Edo Smith, but we have actually seen them even try to get Gurley a little more involved as a receiver in recent weeks. So look, this usage, he keeps finding the end zone. It's ridiculous. He's not being all that efficient with his carries. He only had 63 yards on 23 carries on Sunday, but you know what? As long as they keep feeding this dude 20-plus touches, it's going to be harder and harder to keep him out of that weekly top 12. Still think he's going to be more of a top 16 guy moving on to these future weeks, but credit to Gurley for finding the end zone even when he didn't want to. I think those might be the fantasy football gods getting him back for some of those moves in 2018 that might have been smart and from a real life perspective, but I know those fantasy football managers out there that had him rostered in some of those games were maybe had a slight laugh at his expense this week. PFF Lilly stat of the matchup here. So one of the most common analogies we had for Calvin Ridley this year was that he was the 2020 version of 2019 Chris Godwin. And look, I don't like to pat my back much, but I think if you Twitter search 2019 Chris Godwin is 2020 Calvin Ridley, you might just see your host, Ian Hartitz, mention this in January of last season. Either way, whoever thought of it first, this is the situation we're looking at, and it's honestly looking like a pretty great comparison through 7 games. So 2019 Chris Godwin through 7 games, 62 targets, 47 receptions, 705 yards, 6 touchdowns. 2020 Calvin Ridley, 64 targets, 40 catches, 615 yards, 6 touchdowns. Same amount of touchdowns, Ridley, two more targets. The fact that he had that goose egg game thrown in there just shows you that he could even be putting up bigger numbers. I know that's a part of it, but either way, both these guys, extremely talented. I'm not trying to take anything away from Godwin, just pointing out that Ridley has been anyone's idea of a high-end fantasy wide receiver one all season. Shouldn't expect that to change anytime soon. Next game here, Steelers and the Titans. This looked like it was going to get away from the Titans early, but they were able to come back thanks to some big plays. Ultimately had a chance to send it into overtime with a field goal, but in our continued attempt to ban kickers, we saw another reason why they suck. This one did not go into OT, and the Steelers got the victory. So with this one, Ben Roethlisberger, it was more good than bad. He got the win, but also had an ill-advised interception trying to get it to Juju at the end. That kind of gave the Titans a chance in the first place. It just wasn't, it wasn't the explosive game. And we've been talking about this career low average target depth in 2020. And for Roethlisberger to only throw for, 2 touchdowns, 268 yards on 49 pass attempts, it just shows you the ceiling of this offense isn't as high as, past years. We'll get to the wide receivers in a second, but, even with these guys that we're going to go over, just realize that, even though there might be more than one one fantasy viable option. They're all looking way more like wide receiver 2s, even wide receiver 3s than the past teams we were used to, with AB and Juju being wide receiver 1. So with the receivers, Deontay Johnson led the way with 15 targets, caught 9 of them for 80 yards and 2 scores. Showed a really good job of just breaking tackles, which is what he's been doing all year. Low 8-out roll. It's meshing well with Ben. They're getting the ball to Deontay on the move, and he's making good things happen with it. So, hey, we'll keep an eye on this ankle injury, but if he's healthy, he's ready to go. He's going to, kind of retake his seat at the top of this wide receiver room as the top and most fantasy-friendly receiver in this offense. Juju Smith-Schuster was right there, though, with 14 targets himself, caught 9 of them for 85 yards. We've been talking about Juju on this podcast and how he just has not looked right all season. You'll see him every single Wednesday. He misses practice with a knee injury. And it's just a situation where, look, he does not look 100%, even in this game. I mean, it just seemed like more like zone coverage, or they just forgot about him, honestly. And that was like the situation that he was even picking up yards to begin with. So 14 targets, I get it. If he's going to continue to get double-digit targets like A.J. Green now, we'll reassess. But honestly, I am not going to have Juju in my top 30 wide receivers next week. I don't see these targets sticking. And the fact that, James Washington and Chase Claypool, who were playing the third wide receiver position for them, combined for just 2 targets. And honestly, Claypool's just a pop pass to begin with. That's not going to happen every single week moving forward. Now, I'll take some responsibility. I probably assumed a little too hard that Claypool's usage was going to continue because he's been their best wide receiver. But we got to remember, just because someone's been outperforming other dudes for a couple weeks doesn't mean that, incumbent starters and backups won't get their roles back when they're healthy. But either way, I mean, we're not going to see Deontay and Juju just completely pull away from everyone right now and leave Washington and Claypool in the dust. I still think this could be, a pretty, fluid situation on a week-to-week basis. Going into next week, I would probably rank them Deontay 1, Claypool 2, and Juju 3. Going back to Claypool, I'm not saying you should cut him. We do need to temper expectations. He's not going to be this weekly wide receiver 1 or anything like that. But look, we've seen the boom weeks. This guy is too good not to do anything the rest of the season. I understand targets are going to be a little bit harder to come by, but as we've seen, he doesn't always need all that many targets to make big things happen with him. All right, moving on to the Titans side of the ball. Tannehill under pressure all game, as is anyone that's going to be playing the New York Giants. But, in a game where Derrick Henry wasn't really able to take over, still gave the Titans a chance to, force overtime and ultimately win the game. And that is because A.J. Brown, wide receiver 1 season, everybody. I freaking love it. He caught 6 of 8 targets for 153 yards and a score. We were wondering how healthy he was. It does sound like this, kind of him missing practice on Thursday has become a bit of a just routine trying to keep him healthy. Well, keep doing it because he looked great. I mean, has 73-yard catch and run for a touchdown. Just took, a crosser, split the safeties and was gone. It was really, more similar to what we saw last year. This year, he's kind of been living more on red zone chemistry, just being a big physical bully near the end zone. And hey, that works. It all works because A.J. Brown just keeps scoring touchdowns, keeps making big plays. So, we've been hyping him up as this, top 12 wide receiver throughout the entire offseason because he truly is one of the exceptions to the rule that chase opportunity, not talent. Chase opportunity, not talent, unless that talent is A.J. freaking Brown, everybody. Corey Davis, 6 catches, 35 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets. His long catch was 7 yards. How is that even possible? Just madness. Like, come on, bro, get downfield a little bit. It was, surprising to see Corey lead the way with these wide receivers. It's going to be a situation that's more week to week. I think the important thing to remember with this year's version of the Titans offense is we're not seeing these games anymore where Tannehill's throwing the ball 15, 20 times. They trust him much more than they did a season ago. And because of that, we're going to see A.J. Brown's, usual kind of boom bust nature more from the more of what we're seeing this year. The reality that A.J. Brown is a boom or boom wide receiver, everybody. Jonnu Smith, disappointing game, only 1 catch for 9 yards on 4 targets. Adam Humphries had 120 yards. I mean, no one else was doing much in this receiving game. It's going to be up and down a little bit in this sort of run first offense, but just realize A.J. Brown is the undisputed number 1 dude in this passing game. Quickly touching on these backfields, Steelers, James Conner bumped up in the right direction. This was a good game to see. He has 82% snaps, 20 carries, 4 targets. Now, I know you James Conner fantasy managers out there are saying, well, this isn't a good game. What are you talking about? He busted for us. But first of all, it's not really James Conner's fault. I mean, this was so bad. He had a touchdown catch nullified early, and then he dropped a touchdown. That was his fault. But then he had 2 other runs where he just got stopped just short of the goal line. Benny Snow ended up hammering one of those in, and then they got a touchdown to Deontay Johnson on the other one. So the usage was actually a step in the right direction. I mean, the 82% snaps, we're used to seeing him in the 60s and, kind of a weird 4-back committee. And the 4 targets, he was really working ahead of everybody else in the passing game, at least in terms of running backs. So that was good to see as well. I've talked talked about Connor being a potential sell high candidate because his role was looking a lot more like David Johnson, Kenyan Drake before. This like 60 to 70% snap back with 15 to 20 carries, but more like 1 or 3 targets instead of 5+. And he's been scoring touchdowns in recent weeks, but the thought was that you want to probably get rid of him before some of that touchdown regression comes back. With Big Ben in this offense not being the same sort of explosive unit we've seen. Hey, if Connor's going to stay healthy and keep racking up 20+ touches, he's going to stay in your fantasy lineups. But just realize that he continues to kind of operate towards the peaks of his powers. Same reason why we recommended you sell OBJ after that big game against the Cowboys. Like when you get someone that's just truly at the height of their value, and we're talking in mostly just season-long redraft formats, it is a good time to just try to go get someone that you think could still have their best days ahead of them. Titans side of the ball, Derrick Henry show 73% snaps, 20 carries, 2 targets, only had 75 yards and a touchdown on the rushing. But oh my goodness, everyone, get ready because November is almost here, and Derrick Henry in his career literally starts averaging about 5 more yards per carry once November comes around. All right, let me pull that up real quick because that truly is one of the more crazy stats I think I have on a player. I mean, it makes sense. It's Derrick Henry. Why would you want to tackle a guy when things get more cold and stuff in the weather? I know I wouldn't, but if you look at it, Derrick Henry, this was going into this year, so it might have changed a little bit, but in Derrick Henry's career, going into 2019, in September and October, he has averaged 3.87 yards per carry. In November, that goes to 5.87. In December, 5.38. In January, 5.2 yards per carry. Makes sense from a real life perspective, and guess what? It also makes sense from a what's actually happened perspective. You love to see Derrick Henry in the winter unless you are the defense playing him on that day. PFF Lilly stat of the matchup. So A.J. Brown has missed 2 games, but just realize he is absolutely balling. As it stands, he is averaging 5.6 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown a game on 8 targets. That's 16-game target pace, good for 128. We were wondering if he could even hit triple-digit targets this year. They are truly featuring AJB as the wide receiver 1 he deserves to be featured as. Quick shout out to our sponsors before we keep on going. All first-time depositors at Monkey Knife Fight that put at least $20 into their account by using promo code PFF will receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's a $40 value for just $20, and you'll get the opportunity to turn that $20 into even more money playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest-growing fantasy sports sites in the USA and Monkey Knife Fight. So go to Monkey Knife Fight, deposit your $20 and promo code PFF today to receive your free PFF Edge annual subscription. Always appreciate our fine sponsors over there at Monkey Knife Fight. That's code PFF for everyone out there. Next game here, another 27-24 matchup. Saints and the Panthers. Saints managed to eke this one out. Again, it was another, just kind of sneaky close game. The Panthers had a chance to tie this one with a little bit over 2 minutes left. It was a 65-yard field goal, and it looks like it would have been good from 63 or 64. So tough loss. And you look at these Panthers stats, and I was watching them playing. I was kind of wondering why these guys weren't popping even a little more than they did. Because, Teddy, 23 for 28, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. They didn't lose a fumble all game. But you look at what the Saints were able to do on their drives. The Saints had, 1, 2, 3, 4. Saints had 7 drives in this game. And those drives had 14 plays, 9 plays, 8 plays, 8 plays, 13 plays, 13 plays, and then finally just 4 plays because they were kneeling on the ball to end the game. So absolutely ridiculous. The Saints just did such a good job controlling this entire game. They really didn't even give the Panthers more than a 65-yard field goal's worth of a chance to really get themselves back in it. So, again, Bridgewater, okay, the touchdowns weren't all that magnificent. On DJ Moore's 74-yard bomb, I don't know if we want to call it a blown coverage or Teddy Bridgewater looking off the safety to make it a blown coverage, but either way, was the most difficult throw. And then DJ Moore's second touchdown came out a little pop pass where he just went around right end. And again, wasn't a situation where Teddy was asked to do all that much. We did see Robbie Anderson, 6 catches, 74 yards, and even Curtis Samuel, 6 catches, 48 yards, have some nice plays. Again, Teddy played well. It was a situation where he didn't really have the volume to put up bigger numbers. Also, quickly on Curtis Samuel, 1 carry, 5 yards, and a touchdown, lined up as a running back. As you know, the Columbus, Ohio lifer that I am, I love seeing what should have been and what could still be our generation's version of Percy Harvin out there being used like the true RB wide receiver, just overall offensive weapon that he deserves to be. Moving over to the New Orleans side of the ball. Drew Brees, this is just a really good game for him. He had one of the, token leaps over the goal line from the 1 yard line to get the rushing score. Also 287 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, just 7 incompletions on 36 attempts. So, look, he's not chucking the ball downfield every play. He's never been that guy. I mean, you look at these Saints offenses in the past, it's just, is there, a situation where the defenses are more willing to crowd the line of scrimmage this year and, force them to throw deep? That's up for conversation. But, just in terms of Brees being this, washed and just useless quarterback these days, particularly in matchups like this where he can just almost win and know where the ball is going before the snap, it seemed like. Still a guy that's going to be able to put up, close to 300 yards and multiple touchdowns every single week. The main question with this offense is what happens, when they face a real defense, the Buccaneers or something like that, later in the season and in the playoffs. I understand they had their way with the Buccaneers in week 1, but we'll see what happens in the future. I think these teams are trending in a little bit different directions at the moment, but we'll get more on that in a little bit. With the New Orleans receivers, we had Marquez Callaway caught 8 of 10 targets for 75 yards and no scores. He unfortunately got injured. Not going to be a situation where I think we're going to see him, with too much more work here moving forward, because it is going to be, Emmanuel Sanders back hopefully soon and Michael Thomas maybe at some point. So if not, and Callaway's fine, then okay, he'll be in 2 wide receiver sets. But I would still expect Traquan Smith to be the guy more weeks than not. He caught 4 balls, 54 yards in this one. Jared Cook also had 3 catches, 32 yards, and a score. And finally, Deonta Harris, 4 catches, 46 yards, and a score. So it was really spread out. I mean, Brees, again, wasn't really trying to force the ball to anyone, just was consistently taking what the defense was giving him. It worked. Real life win, fantasy win, for Brees in terms of just what he was kind of expecting to do, getting the rushing touchdown on there. Good stuff all around. With these backfields, Alvin Kamara show per usual, 73% snaps. Latavius was down there at 33%. Latavius had 11 carries. He's been, more involved with Michael Thomas out. I think he's more of a viable flex option as long as those guys remain out. Just realize it's still going to be, not much more than double-digit carries, and, we'd be lucky if you get a target or 2 per game. Kamara did catch 8 passes. I'm not sure what his 16-game projection is, but I continue to just have this weird feeling that he's going to finish with exactly 81 receptions this year. On the Panthers side of the ball, Mike Davis dominated the usage again, 74% snaps, but again, just because the Panthers, they didn't have that many plays. I mean, again, Teddy, 28 pass attempts, and as a team, they only had 14 rush attempts. So, while Mike Davis didn't have this big game, only 7 carries for 12 yards and then converted his 5 catches into 24 yards, still a situation where even when Christian McCaffrey comes back, you are not letting Mike Davis hit that waiver wire, because the second something happens to McCaffrey, we are once again treating Mike Davis as an every week RB1. PFF Lilly stat of the matchup. So our 2020 16-game paces before the Carolina Panthers wide receivers are as follows. Robbie Anderson, 137 targets, 105 catches, 1,465 yards, and 2.3 touchdowns. DJ Moore, 121 targets, 73 catches, 1,309 yards and 6.9 touchdowns. Okay, I think, Robbie's touchdowns are going to rise up and maybe DJ's rise down or drop down a little bit. But either way, it's not Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore. It's Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. Both these guys are getting, wide receiver 1 level workloads. It's like a less sexy version than DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in Seattle. We still see some other guys get targets from time to time, but it's nowhere as consistent, particularly when you include the air yard aspect of it, as we're seeing with Robbie and DJ. Continue to treat them both as weekly wide receiver 2s at worst. Next matchup here, won't waste too much time on this one. Bills beat the Jets 18-10. For those of us that had, Bills minus 10.5, I kind of wish they could have found a way to find the end zone even once against the freaking New York Jets. But no, I'm not bitter. You're bitter. Anyway, Josh Allen, typical I shouldn't say typical Josh Allen fashion, but it was just kind of a funny Josh Allen game. 307 passing yards, another 61 yards on the ground. Again, not scoring on the Jets throughout the entire way, but still kind of serving as a useful fantasy football quarterback despite that fact. And that is the thing with Josh Allen. Like, okay, if you want to call his first 3 or 4 weeks a fluke and say he's never going to play that well again, well, he's still going to be this top 6 or 7 fantasy quarterback in the league, because that's exactly what he's been ever since he came here. His rushing workload, this guy's just willingness to continuously throw the ball downfield. He's going to continue to put up numbers. Whether he continues to flirt with playing like an MVP candidate, I think we've seen that's fallen off, and he hasn't continued to play like that. But just realize that Josh Allen, while maybe we'll knock him down from the top 3 in the QB ranks here moving forward, he's still going to be an every week starter at the position. Could have been a bigger game too. I mean, Cole Beasley had a touchdown where his foot just went out of bounds before. That wasn't really Josh Allen's fault. And also Gabriel Davis had his second touchdown of the year nullified. So this was pretty much Josh Allen's idea of a floor game, which is pretty ridiculous in fantasy football land. With the New York Jets, Sam Darnold, 120 yards, pair of picks on 23 attempts. Denzel Mims had 7 targets in his first game. He looked pretty good. Perryman, like I mentioned, got knocked out towards the end of the game. Braxton Berrios had 7 targets as well. The only guy I want on this offense, I think, with Crowder and Perryman out, would be Mims. I understand they're going to still try to force a slot with Braxton Berrios, but they're not giving Berrios that same kind of dose of Jamison Crowder targets. Sometimes he still makes plays because, Darnold gets out of the pocket and makes something happen, but I do think Mims is going to be the guy to own, if anyone, from this offense. Moving on to the running back room, the one interesting takeaway from the Jets is that LaMichael Pirine really took over a larger role than we were expecting. Ty Johnson was out of the picture, and because of that, we had Pirine playing 67% of snaps, 11 carries, 2 targets. Of course, Frank Gore also had 11 carries, but he was all the way down there at 31% snaps and no targets. So they're giving pretty much Pirine, the Le'Veon Bell role that we were kind of expecting going into this year. 3 down back, that's maybe not getting 20 rush attempts per game, but most of the pass down work. And this is a viable fantasy role. The problem is in this Jets offense that, you really can't expect to score more than 1 touchdown a week, if that, in certain matchups. On the Buffalo side of the ball, Devin Singletary, 56% snaps. Zach Moss at 46%. Singletary led the way in carries and targets, but it was 8-7 and 4-3. Truly a 2-back backfield. Moss had a big, 26-yard run that kind of gave him the superior stats in this one, but I still think Singletary is going to be the guy more times than not moving forward in terms of a production standpoint. But just realize it's an annoying 2-back committee, and then we have Josh Allen vulturing them from the goal line pretty much all the time. So not exactly the most fantasy-friendly situation there. PFF Lilly stat of this matchup. Another great performance from Cole Beasley. Want to give him some credit here for this nice little start he's had, and honestly, nice just continuation he's had from last season. He was playing some good ball with the Bills. A lot of people kind of laughed at Beasley when he said he left the Cowboys to go to the Bills because it was just an all-around better place, and he felt better about the team. I forget his exact quote, but people scoffed at the idea that going to Buffalo was better than staying with the Cowboys, and he's proven us wrong. This 31-year-old slot receiver playing better than ever. Career high 12.1 yards per reception. 2.15 yards per route run, just 1 drop on 49 targets. Credit to you, Cole Beasley. You got too much sauce and you are burning everyone that tries to guard you in man coverage. And shout out Josh Allen, just enabling, a low A-dot slot wide receiver. You don't see that every day. Next game here, we had the Washington football team beat down the Dallas Cowboys 25-3. I think we mentioned on this podcast last week, this was the way that Washington was going to kill the Cowboys, and that was take advantage of an offensive line that just no longer looks anything like that world-beating group we saw, for the better part of the last half decade. So Andy Dalton, before he got knocked out, was just 9 of 19, 75 yards and a pick with 3 sacks. Hardly a situation that we would have felt optimistic about even if he hadn't have gotten injured. Ben Naducci coming in, James Madison quarterback. Hey, maybe he's out there and actually starting next Sunday night against the Eagles. I would kind of doubt it. His first throw, he actually kind of threw it into the honey hole, like cover 2 down the sideline to Amari Cooper. It was pretty nice. But after that, took 3 sacks, just looked shook. He had no business really being out there. And just behind this offensive line, particularly, against this Washington defensive line, they were screwed. Against the Eagles next week, they're going to be screwed. They just can't block anyone right now. And the scheme, isn't really helping matters considering this season. It seems like they're still trying to play like Dak Prescott's under center. Adjust to your personnel people, but it's affecting Ezekiel Elliott. It's affecting the wide receivers. Amari Cooper made it out alive. He caught all 7 of his targets for 80 yards, but nobody else had more than 25 yards. Both Gallup and CeeDee Lamb were goose-egged. Cooper's going to be the one that's going to continue to be kind of an upside wide receiver too, I think, regardless of who comes out under center, because Mike McCarthy is treating him as such a alpha wide receiver 1 like we haven't seen the Cowboys use him over the past few years. But CeeDee Lamb, without Dalton in there even, who knows what we're getting. He could be, more in that wide receiver 3 territory. And Michael Gallup, he's going to be droppable at this point because this is already a situation where he's more of a boom or bust guy. And now we've taken the boom out of the Cowboys offense. So, he's a good enough player. I think he'll make the most of some opportunities down the road. But, only 2 targets in this game. He's cleared a number of probably 4 pass game options in this offense at best, maybe even 5 behind Schultz and the running back. So it's a situation that I think we probably shouldn't expect better days in the near future for Michael Gallup. On the Washington side of the ball, Kyle Allen, 15 for 25, 194 yards, pair of scores, one to Terry McLaurin when Diggs for the Cowboys just kind of sat at 5 yards. McLaurin ran straight past him. It was a pretty layup of a 52-yard bomb, but hey, it is what it is. Shout out Scary Terry getting that done. And then Logan Thomas had a nice touchdown where Jalen Smith wasn't able to make the tackle and was able to skirt on in after that. So, it was a game where Kyle Allen didn't have to do all that much. He showed some kind of pretty solid mobility mobility over these last few weeks I didn't really remember him having in Carolina. Still not someone I think is on the fantasy radar by any stretch of the imagination. Again, this is the Cowboys defense is the nirvana of, any matchup an offense can have, and the fact that Kyle Allen still couldn't even clear 200 yards against them. I understand he could have if they would have put the foot on the gas a little more, but still a situation where I wasn't, overly impressed with what he was bringing to the table. As long as he can coexist, in that, 2-second range between getting the snap and getting the ball to Terry McLaurin like he did today, that'll be all we need for fantasy purposes. Looking at these backfields, so Ezekiel Elliott, a little bit down, 67% snaps, 12 carries, 2 targets. We saw Pollard actually get 8 carries, but I'll crunch the numbers on the kind of the quarter distribution here on Tuesday. Make sure you check out my article. I take stock of every backfield in the league every Wednesday, and that's usually free, not even behind the paywall. And that is out every Wednesday, but I'm going to crunch the numbers and look at the quarters 1 through 3 because I think Pollard was just in for most of the fourth quarter. He did have a great kick return. I mean, look, Tony Pollard's the man, but again, Cowboys have 80 million reasons to continue to give Zeke, the biggest workload he can handle week-to-week basis. Floor is lower than ever. We're going to have to continue to treat Zeke as, a top 10 back pretty much every single week, even if he's going to be a little bit closer to that 10 spot than I think we ever probably could have imagined going in this year. On the Washington side of the ball, this sucks, everyone. So here's the good news. We had a lot of 2 running back sets, but ultimately, Antonio Gibson breakout game. You're probably hoping I'm about to tell you a big number, but nope. Antonio Gibson, 50% snaps. J.D. McKissic, 50%, and Peyton Barber, 32%. So we saw more 2 running back stuff with McKissic and Gibson, and that was good. And hey, the football team went out of their way to get Gibson the ball as they have done all year. 20 carries, 128 yards in the score. Had a nice 40-yard run on a cute little inside handoff reverse thing where Gibson was kind of lined up as more of a slot type. So they're getting creative with getting him the ball, but McKissic still very involved. I think they want him out there more times than not for pass down snaps, regardless of who's getting the ball. And then Peyton Barber to come in and take his, 10 carries, more just a result of the, Washington football team being up so much. And I don't think we're going to see them play with this kind of level of positive game script moving forward. But the fact that Barber is still there is pretty annoying. So Gibson, next week against the Giants, it could be another situation where we treat him as more of a middling RB2 than lower tier, but until he gets that, Christian McCaffrey role we're holding out for, it's going to continue to be more of a situation, I think, where Gibson's going to be top 20, top 24 back, then flirting with that top 10 level. Next matchup here, we had the Green Bay Packers defeat the Houston Texans 35-20. And look, it was a Davante Adams game. And, going into this year, I wonder if Davante Adams could have a target total starting with 2, because not only do the Packers just have so few people around him to compete for targets, but Aaron Rodgers just loves the guy. And, you look at this game, nobody on the Packers, other than Jamal Williams, had more than 5 targets other than Davante Adams. He had 16 targets. He caught 13 of them, 196 yards, pair of scores. The routes all the way around were fantastic. The routes are always fantastic, but you add in just, Adams on his own being anyone's idea of a top 5 talent at the position in the league. You take that. You take a scheme with the Packers that has been better all year, more play action, and we saw in his first touchdown, pretty cool pivot route at the goal line, but they also gave him a rub from another wide receiver. So they're putting him in a position to succeed from, a scheme standpoint. And then Aaron Rodgers just wants to force feed him the ball, and they've got, a mind meld from playing with each other for the past half decade. So everything is going Davante Adams' favor. Why did he not have a huge game the week before against Tampa Bay? Because Rodgers was on his back that entire game because of pressure. So not a situation I think we'll see move forward in terms of what he did in week 6. Well, he's not going to flirt with 200 yards every single week, but truly, if Adams is getting 15 targets per week, which he almost has been when he's been healthy out there, it's going to be a situation where, particularly, DFS cash games, stuff like that, he needs to be locked into the lineups, and he is going to be, even when Michael Thomas returns, I think the overall fantasy wide receiver 1 from here on out. On the Houston side of the ball, Deshaun Watson, 23 for 39, 309 yards, pair of scores through the air, chipped in 38 yards on the ground. Look, this game really wasn't close. The Packers were up 21-0 at halftime, and the Texans really didn't look all that into it throughout the game, but this is just the Deshaun Watson experience in terms of fantasy football, because he's always going to give us a fighting shot at the a roster in that high end QB1. Haven't quite seen the overall QB1 just completely blow performance yet this year, but I think that could still be on the pipeline. Maybe in one of those Jaguars matchups down the road. He's got clear coming up. So it has been the hellacious early season start to the schedule for Watson. I know this game didn't show a lot, particularly on the scoreboard, but just realize from a fantasy standpoint, Watson is that same QB1 he has always been. Randall Cobb, 8 catches, 95 yards in the hashtag revenge game. Brandon Cook, 7 catches, 60 yards. Will Fuller was getting beat up by Yair Alexander most of the game, but found his way into the end zone at the end of the day to help salvage the performance. So we'll see better days, I think, from this Houston offense as a whole. They'll score more than 20 points in future weeks. But again, regardless of what the game script does, I mean, Deshaun Watson is fully capable of putting up big points. With these backfields here real quick. So Green Bay side of things, with no Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams played 89% of the offensive snaps, 19 carries, 5 targets. A.J. Dillon played just 23%, 5 carries and 0 targets. So, I mean, you look at those numbers and it's like, my goodness, what are you doing drafting this guy in the second round if you're not even going to use him when your starting running back is out? So maybe, it's some grand plan that, I don't know about because I'm not in there. Look, I mean, I've doubted the Green Bay Packers enough. It is what it is. Their team's awesome with or without A.J. Dillon, so it's kind of a moot point. Just doesn't make much sense. But anyway, if Jamal Williams is going to keep getting this sort of a role, yeah, he's going to be, even higher than Giovanni Bernard because of the difference in, kind of scoring potential and upside of the offense. Jamal Williams, if Aaron Jones remains out, it'll depend on the matchup a little bit, but with this sort of receiving workload and rushing usage, I don't think he's a special talent by any stretch of the imagination in terms of what he does with these carries, but this is truly RB1 level usage for Jamal Williams. And honestly, same thing kind of on the other side of the ball with David Johnson, 81% snaps. Duke was in there for just 28%. David did find the end zone on a reception, but rushing against the single worst defense in fantasy points per game allowed to running backs, with that being the Packers. We were hoping for a bigger performance from David Johnson, but he continues to be the main guy that they're trusting, well ahead of Duke, and he's going to continue to be a guy that even if that top 5 RB1 pipe dream we were maybe hoping for, just considering the massive workload on hand, even if that's out of the picture, David Johnson is still going to be someone that you could be wanting in your lineup more weeks than not. PFF Lily stat of the matchup here. Devonte Adams this year has missed 2 games due to injury. In another game, he only played a half because he got banged up during it. He is on pace despite that. Not his 16-game pace. I'm saying, taking into account that he's missed these 2 games, he's only played half another one, and just, moving forward to the end of this year, his pace is for 161 targets still. Absolute madness. I know Devontae is in this weird situation where he either doesn't have 1,000 yards in a season or he's only done it once, and people like to, use that against him. But good to see that Aaron Rodgers, when Devontae is out there, holding nothing back and getting his best receiver the ball as often as possible. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. As always, we got 5 more of these, and then we will get on out of here. Next game up, Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat down the Raiders 45-20. Situation that, Tom Brady looked fantastic. His arm, just in particular, just looks so good. Again, that was my concern coming in this year. It was, are we going to see his arm fall off? I still hear people, I've done podcasts and heard people, refer to Brady as having a noodle arm. Look, I understand not everyone can get out there and watch every single game. It's my job to, be as informed as possible. So I feel responsible to, do my best to watch every single game. That's what I've been doing this year. But I mean, to say Brady has a noodle arm is it's just not even correct. It's slander, and it's just wrong, and it's stupid, because even going back to week 1 and the bad game against the Saints, Brady's been dropping deep balls downfield like it's freaking 2009 again. I mean, you look at this dude, 369 yards in this one, 4 touchdowns. The touchdown to Scotty Miller down the sideline was gorgeous. And then we had 3 actually just pretty well placed red zone shots to Gronk, Godwin, and Tyler Johnson. Brady truly just making the most out of all these, weapons at his disposal, and, kind of seeing, we'll get to the Patriots game here in a little bit, but just seeing, how big of a difference. And we've seen it all throughout the year, Stafford without Galladay, Matt Ryan without Julio, Minshew without Chark. I think we underrate just how much, an offensive supporting cast has to do with their quarterback, what they're able to accomplish. Okay, our guys like, Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, to some extent, able to keep on keeping on regardless of who's around them, yes. But, otherwise, I think it does make sense that we got to consider, positively and negatively, impacting these quarterbacks more based on, how healthy their supporting cast is. So, yeah, I mentioned, big games for Scotty, Godwin, Gronk, not so much for Mike Evans, just 2 targets, 37 yards. So there was a quote after week 1 from Bruce Arians where he said that he feels physically ill in any game that Mike Evans didn't get 10 targets. I understand we cannot trust anything Bruce Arians has to say from a fantasy football perspective, but when I heard that, I at least thought, okay, he clearly wants to feed Mike Evans a ton of targets. And hey, they went right back to the well in week 2 and they got him those 10 targets. Since then, 4 targets, 8 targets, 9 targets, 2 targets, and 2 targets again. Arians said this in the offseason when they kind of asked him about, okay, you got Mike Evans and Tom Brady. Are you going to, try to change Mike Evans' route tree to kind of better match what Brady does? And Arians said no. He goes, we like what Evans does as a vertical receiver. We're going to keep him there. And look, Evans has been awesome in the red zone. He's still doing his thing when Brady's giving him chances. He caught 2 of 2 targets and he drew a defensive pass interference in the first half. But it's a situation where I don't think we're ever going to see consistent double-digit targets because ever since Brady got to Tampa, he's been trying to bring his guy AB into the fold. Like they're using Godwin as more of this kind of underneath, guy. Like why is Scotty Miller ever getting 9 targets in a game that you have Godwin and Mike Evans there? It almost seems like Scotty's just playing that role, warming up that role that Antonio Brown is eventually going to be filling. And look, it's a situation where Brady threw the ball 45 times in this game, 45 times in a 45-20 win. I think it's like Russ out there in Seattle. I think Bruce Arians and company, they want to let TB12 cook. He's throwing the ball better than ever, and he's about to have anyone's idea of the best wide receiver room in the league. It probably already is the best wide receiver room in the league. We go with Seattle. That was a little bit of an overstatement on me. That's fine. I'll back it up immediately. But once you add Antonio Brown in the picture, we're definitely talking about the best wide receiver room in the league. I'm more bullish than most on AB. I think this guy's going to be a legit upside wide receiver too, more quickly than we're anticipating. Brady, look, you can say what you want about potential locker room issues. You don't have to like AB. I won't, disagree with you there. What he is as a person or whatnot. All that matters is that Tom Brady and Russell Wilson have spent the better part of the last 6 months trying to recruit this dude to their team. I highly doubt they'd be doing so if they didn't plan on feeding him the ball, at least to some extent. Moving over to the Raiders, though. Derek Carr, didn't get the win, but I thought he continued to play some good ball. 25 for 36, 284 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a pick, took some rough shots out there. This dude was trying to win the game. Offensive line wasn't doing a bunch of help, but look, he continued to look downfield more often, which is exactly what we want to see out of him. Going into this matchup, nobody in the league was averaging more yards per attempt on passes thrown, at least 20 yards downfield than Carr. The problem was he ranked outside the top 25 quarterbacks in deep ball rate, but we have seen that bumping up. He had a season high 9.4 yard average target depth in that win against the Chiefs, and we lauded him, for throwing the ball more downfield to Ruggs and Aguilar. He bumped it up to 9.5 yards in this one. So look, this is good. Carr has a great arm. Now he's got downfield weapons with Henry Ruggs and Nelson Aguilar. I'm not laughing. Nelson Aguilar has been a great downfield weapon this year. It's wild. He did have, a familiar drop and another one hit his hands that he maybe could have come down with later in the game, but 107 yards in a score for Aguilar. He had a long touchdown a couple weeks ago, getting nullified by a penalty. He scored a couple other legit ones. So, kudos to him. I think I saw, as ESPN's Mina Kimes say, Nelson Aguilar, the only guy to go to Las Vegas and really turn his life around. If it wasn't her, it was someone else, and kudos to them on that joke. But rest of the way with this receiver core in Las Vegas. Darren Waller, 6 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. Touchdown, nice little slant from the goal line where they isolated him. There's no doubt about Waller being the just overall number 1 pass game option here. And that's the only problem with expecting more out of Henry Ruggs. He made the most of his opportunities. Had a nice 9-yard catch and run that kind of showed what he can do as just like a yak guy in kind of underneath areas of the field. But ultimately, just 3 targets in this game. Only 3 targets last time against the Chiefs. To see Nelson Aguilar just triple Henry Ruggs targets, even Hunter Renfrow have twice as many. It's something I really hope won't continuously happen moving forward. I think Gruden's going to do everything he can to get Ruggs more involved, but certainly not a situation we can safely fire him up in fantasy just yet. Looking at these backfields here for a second. So Buccaneers, what the heck? Now, a lot of this, again, I think was game script dependent to an extent, but my thought process with both Ronald Jones and Fournette was that this was going to be an issue with either guy kind of being a true RB1 because we have LaShawn McCoy and Keyshawn Vaughn taking away the pass down work. Well, I should say we had them doing that because in this one, Leonard Fournette played 56% of the offensive snaps. Ronald Jones played 43%. Fournette had 11 carries and 7 targets, and Ronald Jones had 13 carries and 2 targets. It's almost like Bruce Arians is making, all of us that like the people out there in the offseason that said, hey, Leonard Fournette, look at all those passes he caught. He's a great receiving option. Like the lazy people that went out and said that throughout the offseason tried to act like Leonard Fournette was this great receiver. And I'm not trying to hate on Fournette, but look, there were 39 players in the league last year with at least 100 targets, and only Tariq Cohen averaged fewer yards per target than Leonard Fournette. He was objectively an awful receiver. I'm not trying to be a dick. He was just a bad receiver last year. And now he is getting 7 targets per game with Tom Brady as his quarterback. To his credit, he caught 6 of them for 47 yards. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's just, if you got all these options, you've had, months and months to bring in different guys to be, your pass down back, and you truly maybe settle on Leonard Fournette. Just kind of wild to see. He did outproduce Ronald Jones on the ground, although Rojo got the touchdown. Still a situation where I think, this could be whoever's on the field when they get down to that range. I don't think any of these guys are ever just going to be pulling each other off back and forth, but we can work with this. If it's only Fournette and Rojo here moving forward, we'll see. This backfield has been changing on a weekly basis, really since week 1 of last season. So not really expecting this, potentially be what we see moving out. But if it is just Fournette and Rojo, and they're both seeing, upwards of 15 combined carries and targets per game, both these dudes are going to be in the RB2 territory because this Buccaneers offense looks awesome. So, Fournette's someone that we've been fading for most of this year and not expecting much from, but we got to roll with the punches, baby. It looks like Fournette is going to be in a situation where he's going to be seeing a lot more touches here moving forward, particularly in the pass game, than we might have ever expected. Josh Jacobs, a little bit of disappointing usage here. Only 50% snaps, 10 carries, 4 targets. We had Jalen Richard chipping in 27% snaps, Devontae Booker 24%. This was, again, one of these situations there where I think just kind of the blowout nature of the game got to it. Usually we're seeing, Jacobs taking off the field for pass down opportunities, when in reality this time, Richard was just more in the game in the fourth quarter for just mop up duties. He ended up having 7 carries on the game. Rough one for Josh Jacobs, but it's been rough for every single running back to face the Buccaneers this season. Truly, this takes us into our PFF Lily stat of the matchup. RBs versus the Buccaneers this year. We got Alvin Kamara, 12 carries, 16 rush yards, 1 rushing touchdown. I'm not going to passing usage. Christian McCaffrey, 18 carries, 59 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Melvin Gordon, 8 carries, 26 rushing yards, no scores. Joshua Kelly, 9 carries, 7 scoreless yards. Justin Jackson, 6 carries, 9 scoreless yards. David Montgomery, 10 carries, 29 yards, 1 score. Aaron Jones, 10 carries, 15 yards, 1 score. And Josh Jacobs, 10 carries for 17 scoreless yards. We talk about matchups, kind of just usually not mattering as much as we think they do in fantasy football land. Vita Vea maybe not being in the fold, obviously not being in the fold here moving forward. Hey, they got Devin White, Levante David, bunch of dudes in the defensive line, and Dominican Sue continuing to play is great. And Carlton Davis, hopefully he's okay. And Jamel Dean holding things down in the back end. Anyone's idea of a great defense, and this is really the reason why I think the Buccaneers should be considered the NFC favorites to represent the conference in the Super Bowl here moving forward. I think they're the only team in the conference that truly combine, a high-end offense with a similar high-end defense. Quick shout-out before we move on here to our last few games. PFF and Sunday Night Football's Chris Collinsworth's team up one of the best players on and off the field, 49ers All-Pro cornerback Richard Sherman. The Chris Collinsworth podcast featuring Richard Sherman is available now wherever you find your podcast. They'll provide the most interesting football conversation in sports every single week, and sometimes that means the discussion will venture off the field too. Additionally, Chris will be taking a dive into the game of football as he sees it, inviting in the best and brightest to talk about everything that's happening in the great game of football. So mark your calendars. You do not want to miss the best 60 minutes of insight this season. 4 more here, everyone. Thank you for sticking with me. Chiefs beat the Broncos 43-16. Weird game. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this one. Just a situation where the Chiefs, they had a kick return touchdown. No, not Nikhil Hartitz. It was Byron freaking Pringle somehow. And they also had a pick 6. So a situation where, the Chiefs got a big lead without even needing to ask Patrick Mahomes to do much. He went through the ball 23 times, 200 yards. He did extend his touchdown streak to, I believe, 17 games with a short little score to Tyreek Hill. But again, just didn't need to put his foot on the gas at all. They did force feed Tyreek 10 targets. He caught 6 number 55 yards and a score, but just not really, enough. There wasn't enough need to force the ball down the field, I think, to really kind of enable that big blow-up game that we've been waiting for. Travis Kelce, a little bit disappointing, caught, all 3 of his targets for 31 yards, but again, just a situation where they didn't have to throw the ball. When they do have to throw the ball more, obviously Kelce would be one of the guys taking the most advantage of it. Demarcus Robinson busted after last week's solid game with only 1 catch for 4 yards. Naturally, Mecole Hardman came back in the picture with 2 catches, 57 yards, and also had a 13-yard carry. One of the catches was real nice, one-handed snag. Again, I know he had a drop last week, but generally, anytime Mecole Hardman is on the field and given opportunities to succeed, he's doing big things with them. The problem is that he continues to split snaps, pretty much right down the middle with Byron Pringle. Demarcus Robinson is going nowhere, and we still got Tyreek, Kelce, and arguably Clyde Edwards-Helaire Edwards-Helaire, and maybe even Le'Veon coming up as guys that, are taking those, just more overall targets volumes from Nikhil. So, hey, great player. He's going to have to continue making the most out of, at best case, 3 to 5 opportunities per game. With the Broncos, Drew Lock, not a good game. This honestly wasn't quite as entertaining as his, win over the Patriots was last week. So, erratic performance. He had a great throw to Patrick early. I mean, still kind of showed off some of that tantalizing arm strength, but last week, his average target depth was at 18 yards. That got down to just 6.9 this week. He did have a, just amazing swagger hound touchdown on a read option where he actually pointed at the defensive end that he juked out a little bit at the end as he was crossing the goal line. So I am still a Drew Lock fan, but look, don't get it twisted. We got to separate guys we like and guys that we think can actually put up fantasy football points. Drew Lock firmly falls in the former category for me. I mean, he was my 27th out of 28 quarterbacks going into this week. He probably outperformed that with the rushing touchdown, but he is not someone that I am, expecting any sort of fantasy consistency here moving forward. Even with Noah Fant back, we had Albert O tying for a team lead with Fant with 7 targets. He caught all 7 of them for 60 yards. Fant looked all kinds of banged up. I would just say, if Lock's okay, and if Fant ever has to miss time, we might actually be looking at Albert O as a top 10 guy because, Drew Lock and him, ex-college teammates, this dude just wants to chuck his friend the ball. You got to respect it. Other guys, just not enough targets that we thought. I mean, they had a ton of dudes with 3 or 4 targets in this one. Judy only had 4. Tim Patrick only had 4, and also the hamstring injuries. So just a passing offense that, look, we got some better matchups ahead. This was never a spot that we were looking to target too aggressively, but, a disappointing performance really all around nonetheless. With these back field. So first game with the Chiefs, again, wasn't the best, game script to kind of figure out what's going to be going on here moving forward, but I do think we kind of saw glimpses, and that is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire should remain the featured guy here. 53% snaps, 8 carries, 4 targets. We saw Le'Veon get 33% snaps, 6 carries, no targets, and DeAndre Washington, 20% snaps, 3 carries, and 1 target. So it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire as the number 1. If Le'Veon Bell can fully overtake DeAndre Washington and also Darren Williams, who was active as well, then okay, he's got 50% snaps for himself. But it's going to be Clyde. I still think there's 20% of there that could go either way. Maybe Clyde continues to play really well. Had a nice 11-yard touchdown. Wasn't 10. You can continue to say that Clyde Edwards-Helaire can't score inside the 10-yard line because he didn't. He scored from the 11. But a situation where he broke 3 or 4 tackles on that run. Great play. He did drop a touchdown pass. He was not perfect, but still a guy that I believe hasn't put a ball on the ground all year in terms of fumbles. Not exactly any reason to be yanking him off the field just yet. Credit to Le'Veon. I mean, 6 carries, 39 yards, and this has never been a situation where we think Le'Veon is washed. It's just, again, Chiefs drafted Clyde, not even knowing Damian Williams was going to opt out. Le'Veon Bell is there, I think, to provide a nice upgrade to their RB2 job, but Clyde is still the guy, in my opinion, here moving forward. The only problem with Le'Veon being there is it takes away that true top 4, top 5 upside that, we would have had with Clyde if he ever would have been able to fully take over this backfield. With the Broncos, again, mentioned Philip Lindsay with that concussion. So once he went out, Melvin Gordon really did dominate snaps, 59% of them, 17 carries, 4 targets. If Lindsay's going to be sidelined, it's going to be the Melvin Gordon show. How effective he'll be with that remains to be seen. We had the big game against the Jets a few weeks ago, but similar to the Jets, just anyone in this Broncos offense is going to carry a fairly low weekly floor. PFF Lilly stat of the matchup. So Mahomes' first start was in Week 17, 2017. And I mean, look, they killed the Broncos today. His first start was against the Broncos as well, and they managed to get a win there. So that's 42 starts between then and now, including the playoffs. Mahomes has had 0 losses by multiple scores in his NFL career. You have to go back to November 19th in 2016 when Iowa State beat Texas Tech 66-10 to find the last time that Mahomes has lost a football game by multiple scores. So it's just, one of these things. It's not like this game was ever in doubt of, being a loss for Mahomes, but it truly is wild how even when this, usually things go right and Mahomes is the winner, without too much difficulty, but he is truly never out of a game and never has been out of a game at the NFL level. Next matchup here, we got the 49ers and the Patriots. 49ers kicked the crap out of the Patriots, 33-6. Not a good day for Cam Newton stands, such as myself. He went 9 for 15, 98 yards, 3 picks, only managed to chip in 19 rushing yards. Look, coming in, I mean, going in this game, he was on pace to have the second most rush attempts ever by a QB behind only Lamar Jackson. The problem is that it's a mix of Cam, not looking good throwing the ball. I mean, those interceptions were certainly his fault. And really, other than that Seattle game all season, we just haven't seen him consistently, being able to get the ball downfield. And it's also just his receivers aren't doing anything. I mean, look, Nikhil Harry left early. The fact that we were even talking about Nikhil Harry not being there is an issue. It tells you all you need to know. Jacoby Myers was easily the best wide receiver in this game. The Patriots traded a second-round pick for Mohamed Sanu last year, and I don't think enough people, continuously yell this out their window in the morning. It's that ridiculous, and the world needs to continue to be reminded of it. So, one of these things where, it's not looking good for the Patriots right now, 2-4 on the year. Jarrett Stidham did come in for Cam at the beginning of the fourth quarter. I'd be pretty surprised if Cam doesn't start this next week, but clearly this is a situation where it's not, he doesn't have as firm of a grip as he had before. Going to be, moving Cam down more towards that borderline QB1 range just because his offense can't move the ball right now. And, people have pointed out that, hey, maybe it's the fact that since Cam's come off the COVID list that, he is, just not playing better because of that. I'm not sure. I have never had COVID, and I've also never played quarterback in the NFL. So tough for me to have too much of an opinion on what Cam's feeling like. And, I saw someone else point out that, he actually later in the game against the Broncos, against the Broncos last week, I think his hand hit a helmet on his follow through, and he hasn't really been throwing that right since. So is this a Cam stand you're listening to, trying to make excuses for the guy? Potentially. I mean, he was awful out there today. I don't know how else to put it. But look, not getting any help. You can see why Tom Brady was so happy to get to Tampa Bay at this point. Run game, Damian Harris, 10 carries, 58 yards, yada, yada, yada. It's just a situation with this Patriots offense right now where we got to wonder, can they move the ball? Because this Broncos and 49ers defenses, well coached, absolutely, fantastically coached, but we have still seen other offenses put up some points against these guys, and you would have thought that McDaniels and Cam would be one of those offenses capable of doing so. On the 49ers sideline, Jimmy G, 20 for 25, 277 yards, no touchdowns, paired picks, got his revenge game win. He made some good throws, and he made some good throws last week. I'm not trying to take anything away from Jimmy G. He's just not being asked to kind of do the same sort of, heavy lifting that a lot of other quarterbacks around the league are on a week-to-week basis. His average target depth was only 5.8 yards in this one. And look, going into this week, and I'm sure this hasn't changed, nobody has averaged more yards per attempt on, quote-unquote passes thrown behind the line of scrimmage. That's because, Jimmy G is so great at those pop passes, or so great at getting this guy's, balls on the screen. It's Kyle Shanahan orchestrating this. So, the fact that Jimmy G can help make Kyle Shanahan's mind come to life, that's valuable. And that's, what's earned him, this 9-figure deal with the 49ers. But just a situation where I think in terms of fantasy upside, probably not going to be seeing much of it, particularly as long as, Shanahan continues to get this run game moving. But, good games for Ayuk, 6 catches, 115 yards. This dude is legit after the catch. Deebo Samuel, 5 catches, 65 yards, also had 7 yards. They're using him as a legit running back, people. And then George Kittle had 5 catches for 55 yards on 7 targets while being his usual badass self as a blocker with these backfields. So Jeff Wilson was active, and because of that, he ended up dominating this usage. 56% snaps before he scored his 3rd touchdown and suffered that high ankle sprain. 17 carries, 2 targets. JaMychal Hasty was number 2 with 24% snaps, 9 carries, 1 target. Jerick McKinnon at just 19% and 3 carries. Talked about on this podcast last week. The reason why we weren't expecting McKinnon to have that same every down role that he had the last time Mostert was out is because Deebo Samuel and George Kittle were out then. They're back now. Kyle Shanahan has his list of playmakers. At that point, when Mostert was out, McKinnon was at the very top of it. Now that, Mostert is out again, McKinnon is not on top of that list of playmakers. So if Jeff Wilson is going to be out, which it sounds like he is, remember, it sounds like Tevin Coleman's going to be back next week. So, but Coleman back, I would probably expect, kind of an early down split between Hasty and Coleman. I think a little bit closer to what we saw tonight. And then McKinnon's role, probably not changing all that much. So I really think right now, in the way the 49ers are willing to throw the ball, get Juszczyk involved, and kind of do their thing with these pop passes and, things that are called receptions that are more or less, just kind of longer, just horizontal runs. I don't think it's a situation where we need to be looking to actively, start these running backs. If you can get Hasty and get Coleman or McKinnon, it's a fine lottery ticket if things kind of even itself out. But how many weeks now have we kind of been waiting to see some certainty here, and guys just kind of keep on falling off? We know Shanahan's rushing offense is going to put up yards, and that's why I'm saying, it's okay to have these guys on the squad. But in terms of expecting one of them to become this, every week RB1 or even every week RB2 moving forward, I'm a little bit pessimistic about that. With the Patriots, usual three-headed just attack. Rex Burkhead, 47% snaps. Damon Harris, 43%. James White, just 18%. Pretty puzzling usage from him. It was just a weird game. And again, Cam in no way, shape, or form played well. But, we did also have a situation where there were 2 lost fumbles. Cam had, like a drop or 2 out there. Another throw that was called back on a penalty. Wasn't the absolute, maybe it was the most horrendous performance you've seen. Wasn't good. No one helped. Afternoon to forget for the New England Patriots. Our PFF Lily stat of the matchup: Deebo Samuel in 2020 has 213 yards after the catch, but only 185 receiving yards. That's right. He has literally caught so many of his targets behind the line of scrimmage. He actually has more yards after the catch than he does real life receiving yards. And that's just how they use him. He is honestly like he is like the best version of a wide receiver that, gets to moonlight as a running back that we've ever seen a coach enable since maybe, early 2010s, Percy Harvin with the Vikings. Because you go back, you include the postseason from last year, and Deebo Samuel has 28 carries for 291 yards and 3 touchdowns as just a pure rusher. He's being used just the usage is fantastic. I really hope the hamstring injury isn't an issue. Now, we've seen him last year. He had a shoulder injury, I think a groin, and obviously had the broken foot going in this year. So get healthy, Deebo. So fun to watch, and the way Shanahan uses them is absolutely fantastic to see. 2 more matchups, everyone, that we are out of here. We got the Chargers. Took down the Jaguars 39-29. My guy, Justin Herbert, snapped my helicopter streak. Happy to see that. Happy to get one on the board. We are on to week 8 for the next one. So with Herbert, just fantastic. 27 for 43, 347 yards, a trio of touchdowns. He found Jalen Guyton for a long 70-yarder, as they've been hooking up with all season. Virgil Green perfectly placed 26-yard touchdown. Then Donald Parham, XFL superstar Donald Parham, for a 22-yard score. So, Herbert continuing just to make awesome throws. Jaguars don't have enough didn't have enough of a pass rush to really make life too difficult. And we got an enhanced rushing floor, people. This was great to see. 9 carries, 66 yards, and 1 touchdown. So I've kind of comped Justin Herbert to Josh Allen, not because they play the same way, but just because they possess the same one skill of they force defenses to really account for every square inch of the field. They both have massive arms, and, I think Josh Allen's a good amount more athletic, or at least a decent amount more athletic than Herbert. But, seeing this game, seeing him take off, really decisively on a read option, it might be a little bit closer than I thought. So, they can run, they can throw downfield, they can extend and then throw downfield. Truly a nightmare for defenses to deal with, particularly in this Chargers team. We got Keenan Allen out there, 10 catches, 125 yards. Mike Williams dudded with only 1 catch for 4 yards, but we know what he can do with opportunity. Hunter Henry's going to have better days ahead of him as well. So good stuff from this Chargers team. I'm just happy that they have a young signal caller like Justin Herbert that should seemingly, enable some fantasy-friendly offenses for years to come. On the Jaguars side of the ball, Gardner Minshew, 14 for 27, 173 yards, pair of touchdowns, 5 sacks though, and wasn't able to get any of his wide receivers over 50 yards. DJ Chark, just 1 catch on 7 targets. He threw a beautiful touchdown to Chris Conley for 28 yards right after Chark got injured. How about the irony there, after Chark comes out and said that the passes weren't on target enough the previous week, but tough performance to feel too good about with Minshew. The guy continues to put up borderline QB1 production almost every week. This was more of a QB2 performance, but it's not really that he's put up bad numbers, but it's been bad enough, results in real life that it does seem like that, a quarterback change could be happening at any given week. And just because that's a possibility means that we're going to be having to rank Minshew. And honestly, these wide receivers are much slower here moving forward. Mike the Draft Glennon is not someone we want to be associated with in the offense. And that goes for James Robinson too. Look, this was a great game by James Robinson, 22 carries, 119 yards and a score on the ground, and also caught a touchdown. But man, this offense is going downhill in a hurry. I've talked about this before. James Robinson, he's just one of those guys where, hey, if someone wants to treat him at the top of his value, and which he has been producing, wouldn't be a bad idea if you can find someone that just truly wants J-Rob on their squad. Looking at J-Rob in these running back rotations, he had 90% snaps. And this wasn't a game with Chris Thompson out. Devin Singletary was not active. We had Dare Ogunbowale from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in action, but he only had 10% snaps, no carries, no targets. James Robinson featured, truly getting just the Leonard Fournette every down roll. And hey, that's valuable. And I get if you don't want to, sell on that 100%, but still a situation where this Jaguars team is going nowhere fast. I just worry, if their true goal in this, season is their only goal really to give James Robinson just 30 touches per week, because they're kind of getting there. So kudos there. But I just, it's tough for me to believe that they're going to continue to go back to well here, even as things continue to fall apart. But we shall see. With the Chargers, Justin Jackson took a little bit of a back seat this game. 39% snaps, 5 carries. He did get the important 6 targets, but we had Joshua Kelly at 47% snaps, 12 carries, and 5 targets himself. So it's going to be pretty 50-50 week to week. I think Justin Jackson is going to be the guy more times than not doing his thing, but this is just a game where no one could really get the ball moving on the ground for the Chargers other than Justin Herbert. And then while Kelly had more opportunities in the pass game, we did see Jackson make the most out of those. I still think Jackson is their pass down back when they're able to do that. Kelly's the early down guy, but in fantasy football land, we're getting a full point per reception. We care more about the pass down guy than the early down guy. PFF Lilly stat of the matchup. So here are the only rookies to throw for at least 4,000 passing yards in NFL history: Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston. Andrew Luck has the most ever at 4,374. So far, 2020 pace for Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Herbert, 4,626 yards. Burrow, 4,624 yards. Neck and neck. I'm excited for this Rookie of the Year race. Let's get it, people. I was talking on some of these podcasts last week saying I think I might take Herbert, moving forward, but they're different players and they're both just playing so well right now. Okay, maybe not playing so well with everything they're doing, but they're putting up fancy numbers. I love to see that. They're showing, a ton of potential for the future. Herbert can make anything on the field. Burrow seems to always know what throw he wants to make regardless of what's going on. Just can he get the ball there, or can he have enough time to get the ball there? I think, again, Chargers offense should be a fantasy-friendly situation for years to come, and I think once the Bengals get Burrow and offensive line, the same can be said there. Last one here, save the best for last, the Seahawks and the Cardinals. Cardinals ended up taking this one after it seemed like that, we might get one of those. I think it was a 6-6 tie we had way back when these guys faced off on Sunday Night Football. So a game that seemed like it would never end ultimately resulted in the Cardinals capturing a 37-34 victory. And yeah, with this one, it was the Tyler Lockett show for the Seahawks. 20 targets, 15 catches, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. Maybe you're like me and you had Tyler Lockett on some teams and you didn't on others, so you just kind of, you just let it go, didn't even worry about it. Maybe you're still tilted. Maybe you're happy, whatever. Tyler Lockett, second 3-touchdown game of the year, first player since Doug Baldwin to do that on the Seahawks, I believe, to rack up these multiple trio touchdown games in the same year. You love to see it. The mind meld was on full display from the first snap. Tyler Lockett reeled in this awesome one-handed catch, had a wild diving touchdown later before the half. That was, right between Patrick Peterson and Budda Baker, best 2 players in that secondary. And then ultimately seemed to ice the game on this 4th and goal pass that Russ just put right in the perfect spot. But obviously Kyler and company got back into it. DK Metcalf, only 2 catches for 23 yards. Had the highlight of the night when Russ threw a pick on the goal line to Budda Baker, and Metcalf, like the freaking massive beast he is, somehow chased down Baker and hawked him and saved the touchdown. But had a touchdown called back in overtime on just a little fly screen that he took the distance. Now the hold that David Moore committed definitely seemed like it enabled the touchdown to happen. But either way, man, I understand Patrick Peterson is a bigger body cornerback and, can maybe give Metcalf some trouble. We talked about this with Aqib Talib on the pod last week. But at the same time, we saw what Metcalf does with the ball in his hands. Like, this dude's a yak monster in addition to just being a vertical downfield threat. So I think just, only getting him the ball 2 times in this game, even though Lockett was just obviously so efficient with his touches, you just would like to see Metcalf have a few more chances to make some of these game-changing plays that we've seen him make all year. David Moore had 54 yards. Greg Olsen had a touchdown. It hit him in the hands that he held on to but couldn't get the second foot down. It truly was just a Tyler Lockett, Russell Wilson show on display. Russ with the 3 picks. Yeah, all 3 pretty bad. Not great, Russ. Still show plenty of let Russ cook, MVP moments. I'm not saying this one, ho-hum game, which wasn't even ho-hum. He made, again, just a number of just mesmerizing throws I don't know if anyone else in the league other than Patty Mahomes could probably make, but just a situation where, okay, can't have those picks and, got to try to avoid those in the future, whether you're Russell Wilson or whoever you are. So Russ did chip in 84 rushing yards on the ground, proven to be this fantasy-friendly QB that we always knew was there, just always didn't know if, he'd get the opportunity to fully be that guy. He is, and that's great. Other side of the ball, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, 34 for 48, 360 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, only 1 bad interception. Also chipped in 67 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Look, it was a DeAndre Hopkins show mostly 10 catches, 103 yards in the score, but also had Christian Kirk pitching in with another 2-touchdown game. Larry Fitzgerald had 8 catches for 62 yards, and Chase Edmonds, 7 catches for 87 yards coming off the bench after Kenyan Drake got hurt. Edmonds also chipped in 58 yards on the ground. Look, Edmonds has been much better than Drake as a receiver this year, but it's not like Edmonds was just constantly ripping off many bigger runs than Drake, for the first part of the season. Then the Cowboys game happened. It didn't really look like we would see Drake, really give up this feature spot. But hey, if he's hurt, Edmonds is that guy. He is going to be, I put him above Jamal Williams, above Giovanni Bernard. I think Chase Edmonds, if truly Drake is out, we're going to see him flirt with the 90% role every single week. And, inside this offense with this, trust he's got from Kyler in the passing game, he's going to be able to put up serious numbers with that. And yeah, I think that just about does it, everyone. Quickly, on Seattle side of the ball real quick. Yeah, Chris Carson being out with a foot injury potentially. Rashad Penny is going to be back from the PUP list at some point. I believe he is eligible now. They need to activate him and get him to practice soon, but we're at that point where he could be back soon. So, if you're in a situation where people really aren't on the radar with it yet, people are worried about, more running backs that might have more immediate week 8 value, don't be afraid to, at least just give, a long look at Rashad Penny, because we saw last year when he's been healthy, it's actually been a 2-back committee between Carson and Penny. So we got Carlos Hyde, we got Travis Homer, we got DJ Dallas there too. Those guys are going to be splitting it, I think, in the meantime, if Carson's out, with Hyde being the favorite to lead him in rushes and, Homer probably being the favorite to lead him in targets. Either way, though, I think Penny is the one that, might be the diamond in the rough in this situation. All right, everyone, that is going to do it. Thank you, as always, for checking out the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, I'm posting these every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You can check me out on Twitter, where I always send out the links at iHartitz, IHARTITZ. Don't forget the Z, otherwise things get weird in a hurry. But thank you again for tuning in. As always, until next time, everybody, take care. Hope you had a good Week 7, and we are on to Week 8.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.